share with you a perspective on a story that I know you've probably heard a whole bunch of times, to the point where it's almost the interpretation of the story is that's the interpretation. But every time I heard it, I was grieved. I was like, I don't know about that. So today I want to share with you a different perspective on the story of Joseph and his dreams and why he went into the prison. Perspective of why he had to go into Egypt and go into the prison, why that happened to him. Okay, so we've heard before that Joseph went into the prison because he had this dream and he boastfully told his brothers, and then later his brothers and his father, and then his brothers, we know, sold him off, and then he went into Egypt, sold him off into Egypt, and he went into prison to get rid of his pride. That is a perspective, and I think it's a good maybe example of trying to break pride. But I think there's something different to this story, and I want to share that with you. So in Genesis 37:1, it says, "And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, named first, probably because the story is about him, but I think there's more to it than that, which I wrote a book called The Verifiable Legend of the Tribe of Benjamin. And it is about Joseph and Benjamin. And Benjamin, whom I can't wait to share that with you guys. The book is in edit right now, so it'll be out soon. And I'll start sharing on it. Anyway, so Joseph, being 17 years old, the Bible says. So the first thing it says is Joseph being 17 years old. And why does it tell us that Joseph is 17 years old? I think it tells us that Joseph is 17 years old because that is a boy. 17 years old is a young boy, a young, innocent boy. And I'll tell you why I say that he's innocent, because the next scripture says, Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren. And the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Now, the reason I say that they tell us that he's 17 years old, that he's a boy, and that he's an innocent boy, is because Joseph is a righteous boy. His father trusted this boy to go and be with his brothers and check up on him, which is why he is sent later to find them, to see how his brothers are doing, and that's when they see him and throw him in the pit. Because Joseph was faithful to his father, to the point where it cost him everything. It cost him relationship with his brothers. Because if his father told him to do something, that's what he did, regardless of the price. And that is the greatest form of innocence a person can have, is to be faithful and of a pure heart to your Father, that whatever He tells you to do, you do it. You go in obedience. And that's what Joseph was known for. That tells us that Joseph was righteous, that Joseph was pure of heart, and that Joseph was innocent of heart, because innocent of heart and pure in heart, basically the same thing. It's the same kind of manifestation. So that's why I say to you that he was innocent of heart. He was a young boy. He was innocent of heart. No matter what he was told, whatever his father told him to do, he was obedient to that. Yes, Father? Yes, Father? Father, when I saw my brothers, they were doing this and they were doing that. That is purity of heart. That is not evil. That is not evil. That is not a troublemaker. That is obedience and faithfulness and purity of heart to Father. Anyway, okay, so it says that now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children because of that. Because it says, because he was a son of his old age. He loved him because he was a son of his old age, so he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that his father loved him more than all of the other brethren, they hated him, and they could not speak peaceably to him. And they doesn't say he couldn't speak peaceably to him because they told on him that he was a troublemaker. It says that they loved him because his father loved him because he was a son of his old age, so he made him a coat of many colors. And what does that coat of many colors represent? Why did Jacob do that for Joseph? He did that for Joseph because the coat of many colors represents the garments of the high priest, where he wore the gemstones. That when you become a high priest, you are adorned with a garment of many colors. It represents the fullness of the glory of God upon you, because of God's calling, of God's choosing, because of your heart, that you can be trusted, that your heart is pure. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. That you stand in righteousness, that you don't have a heart to sin, to be evil, to contrive evil in your heart. So this beginning of Genesis 37, the introduction of Joseph, the story of Joseph, immediately tells us who Joseph is, a young boy, the most beloved of his father because of who he was, his heart. And it says that Father loved him because he was a son of his old age. Okay, just stay with me for a minute. Son of his old age. So let's just look at this from a prophetic perspective. When God created the heavens and the earth, and it was the beginning of the age of time. And we go through the ages of time. And at the end of the age of time, or if you will, the youth of the age of time, to the elderly, the old age of time. In the last days, in the last ages of time, or the older ages of time, God is going to raise up a remnant of his people, and he's going to adorn them with his glory on this earth. That he will prepare this bride, will get prepared. The bride will make herself ready and be adorned, right? Will be adorned as the bride of Christ that moves in these end times, as spoken of in Daniel, and as spoken of in Revelation, as spoken of in Joel, right? This great end time, Joseph adorned bride or sons of God. This is the introduction that we are receiving from Father to Joseph. So we have insight to Joseph, who he is, why he's loved, right? His father Jacob, Father God, loved him because he trusted him, and he adorned Jacob prophetically as the end time saints of God, the end time remnant, right? Okay, so then we know that Joseph has a dream. And he tells the dream to his brothers that he saw himself as a sheaf, and then all the other sheaves bowed down. They were not happy. And it says in Genesis 37:9, and he dreamed yet another dream. And he told his brother, and he said, behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obstinance to me. And he told it to his father and his brethren. And his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream you have dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come and bow down ourselves to thee to the earth? And his brothers envied him, but his father observed the same. Now, it has been established to us in the beginning of Genesis, the beginning of Joseph's story, of what kind of boy he is. He's a boy, an innocent boy with a pure heart. He doesn't devise evil. He never told a lie on his brothers. He just went in obedience, right? This same boy has a dream from God. This same boy has a dream from God that leaves him in awe-struck wonder. He has a dream where he goes to his brothers with this same heart, this same nature, and says, I had this dream. And in this dream, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obstinance to me. They bowed down before me. And the dream before, I had a dream where we were sheaves and all the other sheaves bowed down before me. Can you believe that? I don't think that Joseph suddenly, who is a young boy, his father trusts him with all of his heart to go and see what's happening on the earth with his brothers. And he brings back an honest report, even though it's going to cost him everything, being despised, right, from his brothers. That all of a sudden, we're going to now put on Joseph that he has pride in his heart. Well, I had a dream that the moon and the moon and the sun and the stars bowed down before me, made obstinance to me. It's a different person. It's a different nature. Anyway, so I'm just telling you, I want you to just look and consider this other perspective. And just stay with me, because It's going to all come together at the end. Why? God, these boys that intended such evil for a brother that they despised, that they envied. They didn't hate him because he was a tattletale. And they didn't hate him because he was prideful. They hated him because they envied him. Which is pretty much a through line from the beginning with Cain and Abel and Satan, like with God. Envy is a pretty strong through line, right? Anyway, okay, fast forward. Father sends all the brothers out into the field to tend to the sheep, and they're doing who knows what, right? They're taking longer than they should. So Jacob is like, Joseph, will you go check on your brothers and let me know that they're okay? And he goes looking for them. And he comes to Shechem, where they're supposed to be. But when he gets to Shechem, he's looking around for them, wandering around in Shechem, cannot find them. So a man tells him, I heard them say they were going to Dothan. Well, Joseph goes, finds his brothers in Dothan, a place where they were not supposed to be, but were, and they throw Joseph into a pit. And then, as the story goes, Reuben and Judah, I believe it was Reuben and Judah, did not want them to kill. They were planning to kill Joseph. So they said, let's have an idea. They saw some Ishmaelites coming. They sold him to the Ishmaelites, and off Joseph goes to be sold as a slave into Egypt. Well, we know the whole story of Joseph is a divine, prophetic picture of Jesus, of everything of who Jesus is. Because the whole Old Testament declares Jesus, the coming Messiah, Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Right? So, Joseph gets sold into Egypt, and then what happens? Well, the same familiar spirit, the same thing that he was falsely accused of with his brothers of having pride, or are you saying this? He was just telling his dream. That falsely accused, the same spirit, the same work of evil that tore the coat of many colors that his father made for him, right? They took his coat when they threw him in the pit, and they sold him off. They took his coat and they ripped it to shreds, and they got a goat, a baby goat, and they took the blood of a baby goat and they put it on Joseph's coat, and then brought it to their father and said, a beast, look what happened. We can't find Joseph. Look at this. A wild beast must have got him. It was a wild beast. It was a wild beast system of the Judas goats, of a goat is always trying to give a baby goat in place of the real thing. Anyway, it's a whole other story. Let's go back. I always want to get that in. But, okay. So, when he gets to Egypt, he starts working for the assistant to Pharaoh, Potiphar. And Potiphar's wife sees Joseph and is like, I like that. And tries to make him sin with her. And because because Joseph has a righteous spirit and a pure heart, that he would not go against and sin against his the man that is helping him, that he's working for. The woman strips his garment off of him. Potiphar's wife, a type and a shadow, another familiar spirit of Jezebel that goes from the beginning all the way through the Bible as a through line to the end of time. Till we see her even through Herod's wife, right? What was her name? Herodias, right? Well, we see Miss Familiar Spirit, Miss Jezebel Spirit, we see her in Potiphar's wife, tears his garments, and then falsely accuses him. Falsely accuses him. The same spirit that I think is still following Joseph, falsely accusing him of pride, when I don't believe that is the interpretation of the story of Joseph. He's falsely accused once again, and then he gets thrown into a prison because he was falsely accused. He gets thrown into the prison, I don't believe, to break pride off of him. I believe that Joseph is thrown into the prison to learn forgiveness and to remove bitterness and unforgiveness from his heart towards his brothers. Because in the prison guard makes him a minister over the prison inmates. So while he is in prison, he sees Reuben. He ministers to Judah. He ministers to Levi. He ministers to all of them. Murderers, thieves, manipulators, right? He ministers to evil. And as he's ministering, the heart of love comes from him towards these murderers, these evil intent people. And because he ministered to them, he learned forgiveness. He learned to love the unlovable, so that when a famine comes, when he's taken up out of the prison, and the famine comes, and he sees his brothers coming, when he sees those brothers coming, he doesn't remember what they did to him. He only has love that he acquired and that God massaged into him, forgiveness and mercy and love and grace towards his brothers, so that just like Jesus, who was falsely accused and was nailed to a cross and put to death by his people, his brethren, that he had this same heart depicted through Joseph when he sees his brothers coming, that says, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Joseph looked on his brothers and said, my brothers, I forgive you. What you meant for evil, God intended for good. I think, in my opinion, that this perspective of the story of Joseph and who he was aligns with the prophetic vision and the prophetic telling of this Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the Messiah that was coming, who came and they did to him what they wanted, and who will come again. Because at the end of the age, Jesus will look upon the natural olive branch, and he will love them in great mercy and great forgiveness, and he will graft them back into himself. Right? That's what I think. And I just wanted to share that with you guys. I wanted to just share that because I just hear that, about pride and pride. And I'm like, did he? Did he have pride? Or was he falsely accused? And was he hurt immensely by his brothers whom he loved, who despised him and wanted to kill him and left him basically for dead and sold him to be a slave? Anyway, you tell me what you think. I just wanted to share that with you guys today. Will you leave a comment and just let me know what you think of it? Like, when you consider it, what you think. Okay, that's it for today. All right, I'll see you later. God bless you. Bye-bye.